Alrighty, here we are. We're on the Enroll podcast today. DK, how are you?
Yeah, good man. How's things there?
Yes, very good. Okay, so kicking things off, we haven't really paid much attention to the Enroll podcast, so there's no time like the present. I think where I wanted to start today's conversation was just kind of anchoring ourselves in the mind of who we serve.
Mm.
So, our partners, right? Education providers of all kinds. What matters most to the avatar that we serve when it comes to business growth and ensuring that they hit their targets every month?
I think what matters most to them is what matters to most CEOs and business owners. How much actual profit are they putting in the bank account? Like that's the thing that matters. So it's profit first, revenue second, and then all the metrics fall underneath that. But at the end of the day, the only thing that deep down our partners really care about, the people who actually drive the companies, is how much money is left in the bank at the end of the month and how much revenue are they generating and are their growth targets aligned? That's it. All the other metrics, all they are is just ways to figure out what that bottom number is going to look like at the end of each month, at the end of each quarter. So either they can go and talk to their partners about how they had a good month, or they're dealing with investors and having to, tell them things that they might not be happy about telling them that month, which is they didn't make any money that quarter. All the other metrics that are above that, they're normally the things that, they matter in trying to figure out how to get to that bottom number, but they're not the goal. Views aren't the goal. Like watch time is not the goal. CTR is not the goal. Cost per lead is not the goal. Conversion rate is not the goal. The goal is EBITDA. That's the goal.
Yeah, I just have a question straight off the back of that, though. So views don't count, likes don't count. It's more about the revenue at the end of the day. What about those business owners or CEOs or heads of companies that are thinking that they need to get more likes and more views in order to get more students or get more revenue in the door? What would you want to tell them?
Look, there's a place for that. There's a place for it, but that's an upstream metric. It's not the goal, right? So unless those views are turning into money over a long period of time, then they're not worth having those views. Because in my opinion, being famous for the wrong reasons is actually a liability. It's not an asset, right? So my opinion is you want to be famous with the right people, and those people are the people you bring value to. So views are great if you can, over time, see the cascading effect from more views with this particular group of people. Over time, they turn into revenue, right? But if there's no revenue that comes from those views, there's no point in having those views, right? Because the more views you get on something that doesn't turn into revenue, every view is a liability unless it turns into revenue, right? That's why be famous? Because you're going to be famous. It comes along with strings attached to it. So there's a cascading effect from more views over time. Hopefully it builds you a big brand and trust. And then that turns eventually into revenue. So views are a good thing, but it takes longer to get from views to revenue. But if you want to build a really big business where you've got a lot of trust in the market, views are important over the long term. But it's making sure that the views are for the right people, not just for the sake of views, and measuring the window correctly.
This is why you like paid ads the most, isn't it? Because you can control who you get viewed by.
Yeah, correct. I like that because also at the end of the day, when people are putting money into something, right, you don't know if it's working until you get money back. There's a lot of bullshit where people say, just keep paying for stuff that gets you no returns forever. And that is, if you're running a business, you can't believe the hype, right? That's for people with no accountability, right? So you need to make sure that you can, to some degree, measure the effort and time that you're putting in any area of the business, and it turns out somewhere in your revenue or balance sheet. And it's just paid ads are usually the fastest way to see if something's working. And when it comes to running a business and you're using your own capital, you need to see that capital turn around quickly. Otherwise, you don't know if you've just blown hundreds of thousands of dollars for no reason. But with paid ads, you can normally tell within like a month, is this working or not? Like
that brings up another question for me. Sorry, I'm just opening the Bushkadol now. how do someone might be able to use paid ads, like at a surface level when we say that, paid ads is an easier way to get in front of the right person. But I would say there's a lot of companies out there and marketers that say, we've tried ads on that. We've put money into it. It didn't get any results. And we would probably audit that and go, yeah, it's because your targeting was off. Where are people getting it wrong in that department?
Paid ads is a double-edged sword, right? So the great thing about paid ads is you run an ad, people are going to have eyeballs straight away on what you're selling and what you do straight away. So the market will tell you very, very quickly if you have something they want. That's the simple version, right? But it's brutal because there's other people competing against you who already have figured out what the market wants, and they may just be better than you at it. So if you're running ads, right, and you can't afford to pay for those ads, it means someone else can, which means they're just better than you at what they deliver. That's why they can pay more for those ads, right? So the brutality behind paid ads is you're going to instantly have people looking at your product and your services, and the market will instantly tell you, right, whether or not you have something they want to buy. There's no like pretend, right? But if you don't have all the pieces together, then what it can also do is it means the cost of your leads will be higher. Your cost of acquiring the customer is higher. So paid ads is the fastest way to get an indicator of have you got something that people want to buy or not, and how much are people willing to pay for it. But if you don't have a good offer and people don't trust you, then you're going to pay a premium for that. So that's why if you really want to make everything work, the reason why paid ads doesn't work for a lot of people is because they don't have a good offer. They haven't priced right. They don't have the ability for people to buy it easy. They don't have a good sales team to convert the leads easy. And also they look untrustworthy. So you can't just go, okay, I'm just going to run like an ad for my half-baked product, which is not even that great, and expect everyone to just sign up and buy it because I like it, right? Paid ads is like the brutalist training ground for whether or not you have something that is competitive or not. And I think it's scary for most people, and they turn the tap on and they find out very quickly that it's not that easy. And then the other thing around that as well is that people also don't know their numbers. So they haven't done the year 10 math around it. So they don't know how much they should be paying for a lead, how much they should be paying for a customer, all these different things. So they might actually be just fine on track for where they should be, but they think they should be paying $10 to acquire a customer, when in fact in their market it's $1,000 to acquire a customer, and they think they're failing when in fact they just haven't been spending enough.
How do you begin to educate someone on getting their head around you're not supposed to be paying $10 a customer, it's more this? Or how does somebody start working it out?
Yeah. So the easiest way to do that is there's some maths equations that you can just go do. I like calling it year 10 math, right? Because if your business has to run on formulas that's more difficult than year 10 math, then your business is probably, you don't know what's going on, right? Everything should be as simple as year 10 math, right?
Okay. I can't even remember year 10 math. I'm terrible.
You're probably paying some expensive people with big names who are fluffing you around into figures, right? The easiest way to calculate it is this, right? You've got you and what math works for you. And then you've got the market, right? And what math works for the market. And then you've got what math you should have, right? Which is a combination of what your math currently is and what the market's doing and what you need to get to so you can compete in that market. Those all three things need to align. But the easiest thing to do is start off with your math of where it is today. Then you compare it to the market on what people are currently paying for what you do and benchmarks, industry benchmarks. Then you got to figure out how you can move closer from where you are to where industry benchmark is or better. That's it.
Could I ask a question quick? So when you say your math, is that like if I put myself in the shoes of the customer, I go, oh, I should be getting a customer for $10. Like that's my math, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's a market rate.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And that math, though, it needs to be based in some foundation of my magic year 10 math where it's actually thought out, right? You might say, I want to pay $10 for a customer for my $10,000 product, right? But if you could do that, you'll be richer than Warren Buffett. So that's not really how it works. There's what we want and what we can do, and they're two separate things. So the way I work out the year 10 math for whatever it is that you're selling, let's just say you've got a course, right? And you're selling your course is $5,000 a pop, right? And let's just say that's collected, because a lot of course providers, they're not collecting the full ticket. They're collecting like 60%, right? So let's just say it's $5,000 is the actual cash collected value of your course. Then what you do is you go, what is the benchmark for me as a cost of acquisition as a percentage of that $5,000, right? So you need to calculate that out. Now you're going to have aggressive cost of acquisition targets. Then you're going to have growth versions of cost of acquisition target. And then you're going to have an optimized cost of acquisition target. Now, the difference between the two is that if you're going through like a growth stage, then you're going to put more money towards acquiring customers because you're going to be competing harder. So to give you some examples of this, just to keep the math easy, it's going to be different for different businesses. Let's just say that my target cost of acquisition optimized is 10% of my enrollment, right? So let's just call it $5,000 is the total amount that I'd be getting per enrollment, right? And ideally, in a perfect world that will keep everybody happy, I can get those enrollments for $500, which is 10% of the 500. So I'm putting that to buy a customer. Got 90% left after that, which is pretty damn sweet, right? But you then need to decide, right? If you're going through a growth stage, you might need to jack up that price to something like 20% or 25% of cost enrollment, right? Because
Why?
Because you're going to be competing against a lot more people who want more of the market share, right? So what that means is you might be able to get one enrollment per week at $500. But if you want 10, more likely than not, you're going to have to push more, like stretch your budget out and spend more across heaps of different spaces. You're going to be pushing against other competitors, other big competitors who are like, stay out of my space. This is mine. So you're going to get into bidding wars against other players who have an agenda to keep their market share, right? So if you got like a big college who is needing to pay 100, 150 staff per week, they need a certain amount of volume to keep everybody fed. So if you're trying to push into their market, you're going to have to start bidding against them, which means your cost of acquisition has to go up because they're going to not want you taking their traffic.
Sure.
So as you try to acquire more market share, then your cost of acquisition target will naturally go up as you acquire that share. So it might have to go up to, say, 20, 25% of your ticket. Okay. Yeah. So that's
would an easier way to would an easy way to conceptualize this be the same as how do you call it, supply and demand? Okay, so there's only a certain amount of eyeballs for one particular thing, like a course in dog training or whatever. There's a particular amount of eyeballs, and there's going to be a suite of people that want to pay money to get in front of those eyeballs. As soon as more competitors start coming in, there's still only the same amount of eyeballs, but there's more competitors all trying to bid for the same people. The more people that come in, it's going to be the people that can spend the most to get those eyeballs that's going to keep winning. Is that the best way to conceptualize it?
That's how it works. Yeah. So that's why Google doesn't care if your product is $100 or $10,000, right? It doesn't care. It still wants to get the same amount for that keyword search. They're not going to change the rules because your product is cheaper or you can't convert the lead better. But the leads are going to, and the eyeballs are going to go to the companies who can afford to pay the most. Like that's how it goes.
And so to think, oh, sorry.
Yeah, you go.
No, I'm just trying to think about it in terms of like when you say your cost of acquisition, you might need to jack it up. That's why if you've got a high ticket item, being comfortable with spending a lot of that price to get the customer, and you've got to know your market intimately and how saturated it might be and what that's all going to cost. Yeah?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's how it relates back to what we were saying with the year 10 math. You have your numbers, which is, let's just say I've got a $5,000 course. In a perfect world, I'd like to spend 5% of that. But when it comes to the real world, the rest of the world might be paying 20% of that. So you might get 1 or 2 leads like enrollments per month at a very cheap rate. But if you want to compete with everyone else, your cost of acquisition will naturally have to go up to meet the averages of the market. So you might want one thing, but the market might not deliver that to you. So this is how you work out your own. So for example, you'd go, okay, $5,000 course. Ideally, I want my range to be somewhere between 10 and 20% of cost of the course. So I'm happy to pay somewhere between $500 to $1,000 in cost of acquisition of ads to be able to acquire that. Then what you'll do is go, okay, let's just say at the high end then, and my leads, our sales team usually converts at like 10%. So you just take your cost of acquisition, you divide that by your 10% mark. So that would be between 500 to 1,000. Then your range per lead would be somewhere between $50 to $100 per lead would be your sweet spot. And that's how you'd run your maths. And you go, am I converting around 10%? Am I getting enrollments for somewhere between $500 to $1,000? Are my leads costing somewhere between $50 and $100? Yeah, I'm on target. Happy days, right? And then once you've got those in, then you're going to have other problems with scaling, because once people hit those numbers, they start going, let's get 5 times more enrollments. And then you get other problems you got to deal with.
Of course. I'm just thinking as well. So that's a lot of in-house data that, heads of companies need to be intimate with.
Yeah.
How on earth do we do that for Get Course as well and Enroll? Like, because we're a company ourselves generating the leads, but obviously the end user is our client who needs to obviously be generating revenue. We need to be aware of that and then seeing that total picture. So being a business who helps other businesses get their revenue in, like the revenue partner model, how do we manage that? How do we know we're doing a good job for people?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, when working with someone like us as revenue partners, basically it comes down to transparency and live data, right? And that's what it comes down to. Like, we need to know when the enrollments are happening live. We need to understand the cost per leads to manage things on our side. Our partners currently share their revenues with us as well live. And what that allows us to do is to make sure that we are helping to make our clients money. Like, that's the number one thing. Like, people might go, okay, we want to get leads and all that sort of stuff. But fundamentally, what people and business owners want to buy is they want to buy revenue and profit. And it's just how they deliver it. So to be able to do that, we have systems in place to be able to make sure that we're live and we're getting the data that we need to make sure that we can run the marketing for them, just like a hedge fund would run advertising. You spend money, you expect money back at the end of the month or end of the quarter. And that's how it is. Like, we're getting paid to manage marketing like a hedge fund manages investments. So you need the data in, and we need to get live data coming straight out of the client CRM to be able to do a good job for them. Like, that's.
Yeah. So one thing I want to flick back to as well was before you were talking about like pillars. I think there was 5 things you mentioned, but I noted 3. It was trust, sales, and offer.
Yeah.
Now, if there's an RTO or a training organization that knows they need to boost their enrollments, and they hear those things and they go, shit, our offer's off, our sales are off, trust is off. Like, there's all of these fires happening at one time. How the hell do you start putting that all into alignment and working through them? What stages and what's the most important?
Yeah. RTOs are in a bit of a funny situation because they're pretty standardized, like across board. And that's probably one of the main things that you hear a lot of the frustration around them. But as a general rule, ideally you'd start with the offer would be the first thing that you'd fix first. And then once you've done the offer, then you'd add some fuel to the offer, which is some paid advertising. Then once that's done, you would naturally have more leads coming through. So you'd want to try to fix up your sales process, right, to get that dialed in. And then once that's in, you want to add the social layer to add trust. Because the way that the current customer journeys will go at this point in time is people will see the ads, then they'll go have a look at your social media pages to see if you're legit. Then they'll see your ad again, then they'll inquire, and then you got to play funny buggers backwards and forward with a bit of like catch me if you can with SMS and, digital communications with the students that need a bit of, care and attention, and then they'll buy. But logistically, it's very hard to get good results with a very poor offer from paid ads. So that's what
Mm.
I would start with: offer first, try to get the offer competitive, right? That will give more runway in the paid ads, because once people are starting to spend money on the paid ads and they're not making money, everyone becomes a bit worried because money is going down very quickly. So if you can get the
Mm.
offer up to a point where at least it makes sense financially for them to keep running the ads as long as possible until you can start
Mhm.
tightening up the rest of the screws in the system, then it kind of lines everything out, which is fix the offer, run some paid ads. Hopefully those two are in alignment, fix up the sales team to make sure that's running at benchmark, and then add the fuel on the trust with the social media. Once they're in alignment, then put more fuel in the tank and start scaling it up.
Just going to the concept of offer, I'm thinking about this because I know some of our partners, they're able to sexify or make their offers sexier because they're not under so much regulation. But our RTO partners, they've got a very strict guideline to stick to. So with such a rigid product suite or offer, sometimes there's not a lot they can do. So what levers do they have to make their offer a bit sexier?
I can only share what we've seen, and you might have been able to see a few of these yourself. I think a lot of
Mm.
it, while I've been doing this for a while and seen a lot of things, I wouldn't say that I'm a specialist in compliance, and that's not my job, right? And
Yeah.
I know compliance is a huge issue in that space altogether.
Mm.
But what I've seen work well with a lot of the RTOs is adding extra things to their certificate, or unique elements to their certificates to make it better. Now, this might not fit
Mm.
all the requirements for each of them, because all the states have their own funding and government has their own things like this.
Mm.
But what I've seen work really well is, A, be in a market where there's lots of demand for that industry. That's a very good thing.
Mm.
The second thing is try to provide more value that helps the student get closer to their goal of starting the career. Now, that part there
Mm.
is really going to be dependent on the RTO and what they can do, which is in line with their compliance and regulations of being able to deliver it. But that's what I've seen work really well for them, is adding bonuses and things that can really support them in moving from the certificate closer to the career.
Do you know, just in saying that, I could also add to my own question, because on the careers podcast or the education podcast, when I've interviewed Hader, one of our clients, and then also women's fitness education, just reviewing that in my own brain right now, both of them have really unique positions in the market. So when I was talking to Jesse, he was talking about how they've got a Discord community, and that's where a lot of role play for assessments and stuff comes in, and the little differences and tweaks that he and the team there have been able to implement, it really increases morale. So while they still have to fit within guidelines of, nationally recognized this and that, the nuances that they throw on top of it, I guess that is how you can add to the offer. And what else did they put in? I think Danielle from Women's Fitness Education, so their unique selling point, they offer the certificate a 3 and 4 in fitness. But what they've done is they've repackaged it to take more of a focus on women's fitness and women's health. So they have their own CPD components of the course that they're able to bolt on in the front end. And that's what makes the course still the certificate in fitness, but with a bit more nuance. And they also hold like weekends down in Melbourne where everyone gets to meet up. And it's really more that sense of community. When I reflect on those conversations now, that really makes that offer a bit different. And you can actually see it all through their marketing too. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think what the RTOs have is that trust layer, which obviously when you're getting a nationally recognized certificate, it provides that
Mm.
layer of trust to the student that non-accredited providers can't really get. So it opens a bit more doors that way. But the downside is there's regulations that come with that. So I think the magic is always going to be, in a perfect world, is how can you provide a really unique and tasteful experience with that nuance to your
Mm.
ideal students and still have that trust of the government regulation as well. So I think that's really, really what the magic is, because the certificate itself is important, but I think what the student feels like they're getting that's more than just the certificate is super important.
Mm.
Well, that's how they make those buying decisions around it. And I think there's some magic in that.
Yeah. And I guess like it will set apart in the long run, particularly into the time we're going into, it'll set apart the ones that are going to succeed and fail. And you know what? When I think about it too, the type of character that both when I look at Danielle and I look at Jesse, and they're go-getters. So like they get in there, they try stuff, they're not afraid to like put things in the works. And I think as well, when I look at other partners that maybe haven't worked out for us, when I look at some of their behaviors, they're almost too scared to like make one compliance mistake, which stops them from even exploring new and fun ideas. So yeah, it's actually a bit of food for thought, and good point. I think we're getting up to about 40 minutes now, so I think that'll be good for today's episode. But is there anything else you want to add on to the end of it?
No, I think that's good. I think we've covered a bit today.
Nice.
So yeah, I think we can cover a few more of these subjects and flesh them out in our next couple of potties together.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, man. Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
Done.
Bye. I think that'll work.
Yeah, I think that's fine.